This is Candler Hospital. It's the oldest hospital in the city. It is an antebellum structure. It was built during that period that I talked about earlier, during this enormous expansion of social infrastructure in the city. This was a public hospital, a true public hospital available to anybody. It was white, and just like the school, there were an awful lot of charity patients. In the case of Chatham Academy and Massey, most of the students that were attending on scholarships, which meant that they were being paid for by somebody other than themselves or their parents. So the hospital served the community extraordinarily well. During the war, it came to be used as a Confederate hospital, and then during the occupation by federal forces, they took over the hospital and turned it into a federal hospital. Towards the end of the war in 1864, there were two prison camps in Savannah. One here, which was Camp Davidson, was the camp for officers. There was about 600 officers here. And then directly on the other side of the park, there was a much larger camp, which we have detailed diagrams from, which held somewhere between 5,000 and 6,000 prisoners. Robert Sneeden, the artist, was one of the prisoners. As a result, we have some very good artwork showing what these prison camps look like. We don't know a lot about what was happening in the enlisted man's camp, but we have a number of great letters of people from soldiers, officers who were here. And one of the things that's clear is that they were being treated based on their experience to date extremely well, extremely fairly. They are being guarded by the 1st Georgia Regulars and by Colonel Wayne, Savannah boy. And in their letters, they say that, look, we were given as much meal as we could handle. We were given tents, we were given pots, we were given bricks to make ovens, and they say a lot of complimentary things about the 1st Georgia Regulars in terms of what they did for them. And interesting enough, we have letters from soldiers in the Regulars who are saying it's really a shame these guys are caught here. If their government would allow exchanges, because don't forget that was the problem, they wouldn't allow exchanges. The reason they didn't allow exchanges is that Confederate troops would come home and go back into the Army, while Federal troops would go home and go home. Right? And so Grant didn't want to be facing a constant stream of now veterans coming back into the line. In fact, he said that if exchanges weren't ended, it would lead to a war of extermination. That was his term. In other words, we'll have to kill them all because they keep coming at us, right? So, but in ending exchanges, he sentenced thousands upon thousands of Federal and Confederate troops to death in these camps. Because for the most part, it was just a big wall and they just threw you in, right? There was no library, there was no, you're there. But on the whole, the citizens of Savannah made a real demonstration to come out, and even though Savannah was pinched at the time, provided food and clothing and bread, and they had good water, which is always the key. They had good water running from Savannah's reservoir system. And although they weren't here very long, they were well treated, and we have some absolutely wonderful letters. One of the letters describes the prisoners here taking refuge under an oak tree, this oak tree, now called a Candler oak, the oldest oak in Savannah. And they would sit there and they would sing a song called Louder on Exchange. And it was just a bit of a ditty they'd sing about, we got up today and we did this and that. And somebody would say, louder on exchange. And the chorus was always louder on exchange, which meant they wanted to be exchanged. And whenever they heard that, the idea was to belt it out, louder on exchange. And I often kid people that if you could come here someday on an evening where the traffic is not heavy, and you put your ear to that tree, you might just hear louder on exchange.